Hello and welcome to my brew garage. Today is a beautiful sunny day here in the Pacific Northwest, and what better day to break out the brew equipment and make us a wonderfully hoppy IPA than today. So without further ado, here's what we've got cooking. Today I'm using 11 pounds of Pale 2-Row, 1 pound of Munich Malt, and a ½ pound of Caramel 40. For today's hops, we're using 4 ounces of Amarillo, 2.5 ounces of Citra, and 1 ounce of Warrior. And for today's yeast, we're using Imperial A24 Dry Hop. Today we will be adjusting our water chemistry to help accentuate the hops in this beer with a West Coast IPA profile. The key to this is to have a sulfate to chloride ratio of 2:1. Later in this video, I show the exact amounts needed in order to achieve this profile. Bear in mind though, this is using reverse osmosis water. You can also use distilled water, but if you're using your home water, you will need to adjust the chemistry accordingly. For today's brew, we're using an all-grain propane system. For any of these items, feel free to look in the description below. Just like every brew day, we start by milling our grains. Once we have milled our grains, we fill up our kettle for the strike water to 4.7 gallons. We're going to go ahead and heat this water up to 169 degrees Fahrenheit so that we can mash in at 155 degrees for 60 minutes. All right, while the water heats up, we're going to go ahead and add our water salts. In they go. With our water at strike temperature, we're going to go ahead and start filling the mash tun. And while that fills up, we'll go ahead and add our grains. We will give it a quick stir before we throw the lid on. Make sure that we have no dough balls in there, otherwise we'll lose some efficiency in the process. Basically, dough balls are just little bits that are stuck together and dry. And of course, we don't want any of that. We're going to go ahead and put the lid on and start our timer for the 60-minute mash. While we wait for the mash to finish, I've filled up the kettle with another 5 gallons of water. That way we can start heating up some water for the sparge container. Now that we are 10 minutes into the mash, I've taken a sample so that we can get a pH reading. We want to aim between 5.2 and 5.4. Looks like we are at 5.3, so today we don't have to add any lactic acid. That's awesome. From here, we'll just let the mash finish and move on to the next step. While we wait for our sparge water to heat up, I added salts to this so that we can keep our water profile consistent. Now we are just waiting for this to heat up to 168 degrees before we add it to our sparge container. With 15 minutes left in the mash, now's a great time to pour ourselves a beer. This is a Bubblin' Session IPA from my previous video. If you're interested in what that recipe is, just click the link above and check it out. This thing turned out great. It was a huge hit at our 4th of July party as well. Look at that. Beautiful gold color. Go check it out. Our 60-minute mash has come to an end. We're going to go ahead and start to collect some wort off of here and just work to clean the lines out so that way we don't take any of the grains with the wort. We'll just take a little bit, pour it over the top nice and gently. Once we've done this, we'll hook everything up to our sparge container so that way we can keep water flowing over the top of the grain bed while we take some wort into the kettle. Our goal is to get to 7.4 gallons in the kettle and a gravity of 1.048. Now, before we hit the 7.4 gallons, I'm gonna go ahead and take a hydrometer reading at about 6.5 gallons just to see if we are getting close to our pre-boil gravity. So that way we can try and hit it right on. All right, that's looking clean. We're gonna go ahead and start taking our wort. After filling our kettle with wort, I took a sample. Our gravity reading after temperature correction came to 1.051. We were aiming for 1.048, so we were a little more efficient than we were expecting. Now it's time to get to a boil. We have come to a boil. At this point, I'm gonna set a timer for 60 minutes, and we're gonna add our first hop addition of Warrior, 1 ounce. I've also turned down the heat so that way we can avoid boil over. We'll give that a good stir to try and break the surface tension. With 15 minutes left in our boil, we'll go ahead and add a Whirlfloc Tablet to clarify the beer. With 10 minutes left in our boil, we'll add our second hop addition, 1 ounce of Amarillo. This will be our flavor and aroma hop. With 5 minutes left in the boil, we add 3/4 of an ounce of Citra. Again, another flavor and aroma hop. Also, since we are 5 minutes from the end of the boil, we're going to go ahead and put our wort chiller into the mix, as well as our aeration paddle. This is so that everything can get sanitized during the boil. If we can fit it all in there. There we go. Get it all sanitized during the boil so that way we can keep all bacteria out of the process. After 5 minutes is up, we'll cool her down to 170 degrees and add our hop stand hops. These will add more flavor and aroma. Now that our boil has come to an end, we shut off the heat, cool it down to 170 degrees, and add our hop stand addition. While we wait for the wort to chill, we're feeding that hot water with Star San into the fermenter. Just a little recycling going on. Don't want to waste all the water here. Anyway, at this point, we're going to go ahead and bring this down to 170 degrees, and then we'll put our final hop additions in. Now that we have cooled our wort down to 170 degrees, we're pitching 1.5 ounces of Amarillo and 1 ounce of Citra. We'll let that sit for roughly 20 minutes and then cool it down to pitching temp. Now that our wort has cooled down to 70 degrees, we're ready to put it into our fermenter. The fermenter has been sanitized along with this hop spider that I'm going to use for just helping filter out some more of the hops, just in case some gets through from the kettle. I've also taken the time to aerate the wort using a paddle. That way the yeast has more oxygen in order to grow. All right, let's go ahead and pour off our wort. Our final gravity came in at 1059, exactly what we were looking for this recipe. All right, now that our wort is in the fermenter, we're ready to pitch our yeast. I'm using Imperial A24 Dry Hop yeast. I opted to do a yeast starter. You don't necessarily have to, but just go ahead and pitch it right on in. And with that, we'll come back in a week or two and see how it is. Hello and welcome to the tasting of the Floater IPA. Let's take a look at this thing. Turned out a beautiful golden and clear color. Some nice citrus notes on the nose. We'll give it a taste, see if it comes through there as well. Very citrusy on the taste. Has a little bit of bitterness to it, but not nearly as much as I would have expected for the 73 IBUs this beer is supposed to be. And I'm sure that's attributed to the fact that we use the Imperial A24 Dry Hop yeast, which is meant to give a beer more of those citrus notes. Today is day 22 since brew day, so it's had a little bit of time to clear up. After the 11 days of fermenting, packaging, and carbonating, this thing started off pretty hazy actually. So giving it some time, it has matured a little bit. Some other notes on this beer, it was finished fermenting in 5 days, at which point I collected some yeast for the upcoming brew, as well as dry hopped it with 1.5 ounces of Amarillo and 0.75 ounces of Citra. Final gravity, it came in at 1.014, which gives us an alcohol level of 5.91%, so moderate alcohol percentage on this beer. Could easily crush a couple of these and still feel just fine. As far as anything I would have done differently, maybe add a few more bittering hops right at the beginning of the boil at that 60-minute mark, just to kind of give it a more well-rounded bitterness throughout. But otherwise, it's a solid brew. I highly recommend that you try making it yourself. If you do end up making it yourself, let me know how it goes, and if you try anything different, leave some comments below, and until next time, cheers.